past is gone. The future isn't here yet. We make our decisions today based on what we have. Do I wish I'd made other decisions? Yes, but you can't rewrite that. You can only be present and go forward. If this is your first video of me and you're watching me for the first time, I might say that I was married for 34 years to a lovely human being, a lovely sorority girl, and we divorced after 34 years when I had to come out of the closet. In 1953, I was born on a small, poor farm in northern Illinois. It was a farm community. My father shot deer off of the corn picker for meat for the family. We packed apples in the well pit. I was the farm kid growing up, picking up rocks out of the field, chasing pigs out of the corn. It was also raised in a household that my four brothers and I agree was basically a warlike environment between my father and mother. It ended up inducing in me a huge piece of insecurity. I was in a very deep, insecure well by the time I was coming of age. So to those out there who fault me for lying, I'll give you the first lie. The first lie I told myself was, I'm not gay. The first lie people in my position tell themselves, I'm not gay. I can't be gay. And the first lie starts with yourself. It's the most devastating lie because it starts you down the pathway to the right of disauthenticity. If I'd come out as an 11-year-old in 1964, imagine that. Imagine society's reaction when the images we had was Midnight Cowboy and Alice in the Park in the Dirty Harry movie, trying to seduce Clint Eastwood on his trip through the park. Those are the images I was swimming upstream against. So I chose to be straight. Even in 1972, when I'm graduating from high school, the American Society of Psychiatry was saying, being gay is a disease. It's a sickness that we need to have a therapy for. Now, I met my wife in college. We had a great affair. We were fraternity and sorority people. I loved my wife and my girlfriend because she actually saved me from my parents. She was a wonderful person. I think she still is a wonderful person, and I take care of her very well. We had a great relationship for 15 years, me choosing to be straight. It became unsustainable. It became a bigger distraction. And finally, in the mirror one day, I looked at myself and I said, "You're gay." It's the first time I ever said it aloud. It's the first time I ever said it looking at my own self. I talked to my wife in Paris on Valentine's Day, and I said, I'm still working out my sexuality. And that's as far as I got. She burst into tears, and I was crushed. And we spent the next 3 days in Paris ignoring the subject. So I couldn't talk about it as an 11-year-old. I couldn't talk about it when we were getting married. I referenced it briefly, but we didn't talk about it. I tried to talk about it as a 35-year-old. It just didn't work. There was going to be a gigantic price to pay at every decision point. Thank you to the American Psychiatric Association for blessing me when they decided, oh, gay isn't a bad thing anymore. It's not a disease anymore. It may still be a bad thing, but they just said it wasn't a disease. It just wasn't a blessing that you used to get over being gay. The trauma, the fear, the ego control of the pain body, if any of you read Eckhart Tolle, it doesn't go away. I didn't get blessed by the Pope and suddenly there was sunshine coming over the hill and I could go out and pick tulips. It lingered badly. At the end of my MBA degree, a friend of mine at the table said, "What are you going to do now?" And another friend said, "Why don't you go to med school And I said, well, I'm too old. I'm 39. And he said, no, we got all kinds of old guys. I wanted to do something productive. I wanted to feel good about myself, but I wanted to distract my head from thoughts of being gay and going against society and hurting my wife and killing off all my relationships and all the horrible things that I could imagine. So after MBA school, I went to medical school. And in all honesty, it was easier to go to 8 years of medical school and residency than it was to come out. Now, can you imagine that? It's easier to study and get into medical school the first time. After the first year at the University of Illinois, I'm in the top third of the class. I'm the president of the class. I graduate with honors. I was the chief of 18 hospitals for anesthesia, and it was all easier than coming out. At this point, I'm 55. It was all unsustainable. It still didn't get to the root cause of my unhappiness. I had everything. Big house, big money, lots of self-esteem, research projects in anesthesia, and it wasn't good enough. It didn't make me happy. So I came back to Pasadena and eventually came out to the world. Some of my friends, their reaction was, how can you be so disingenuous? How can you be so selfish? How can you dump your wife and all your relationships in favor of being gay and selfish and having, the imagination is wanton sex with whomever? What's the alternative? I would ask you, what would your answer be? What would you suggest to me? Knowing that there was always going to be a cost, and the cost increased throughout my life. I didn't know this, but there was always going to be a cost. Now, should I have continued my relationship with my wife? Should I have continued to stay in the closet? I was developing a severe case of alcoholism after all this. Nothing was working. No method of distracting myself was going to help. Alcohol wasn't helping. Career wasn't helping. Materialism wasn't helping. I was disconnected from everybody because I couldn't practice authenticity and reciprocity in my relationships. So I'm going to ask you, what's the alternative? So I came out. Now, at this point, I'd like to, for you people who have come out or would like to come out, you men, you women, it's the same issue with the women. Don't expect everybody to just leap into your corner. It's going to take time. Some people will instantly get it. Some people will never get it. There's a lot of work here. It's a roller coaster up and down. For a year or two, in looking back, it was a roller coaster. I was free and liberated from myself, and yet there was this heavy burden of guilt that I was putting this on my wife. After we got divorced, or when we were going to get divorced, many therapists told me, you take care of yourself first. After we split up, they said, it's not your job to make your wife happy. I'd been trying to do that all my life. It didn't work. I've been trying to please my parents all my life, and my nephews and my friends and my concept of society. That's not my job anymore. My job is to take care of me. Now, forgive me if that feels selfish, but I've tried every other thing, and it's worked. So if we stipulate that what we owe our spouses is authenticity, then I didn't have a choice. I had to come out. Whatever happened in the past, whatever wrong decisions I made, whatever lie I told, it was time to take care of it. This gave my wife decisions to make, and she made them, and she wanted to split up. And she wanted to because her therapist said, this isn't healthy for you. And so it would have done her no favor for me to continue in the closet and cheat on the side. I mean, where does that get you? Okay? So we split up at the age of 55. It wasn't out of anger. It wasn't out of jealousy. There was pain, but I fired my lawyer before we got into a fight. I got my $4,000 back that I'd given him as a retainer. I walked over to the other office building and signed my wife's divorce request, and I'm still paying after 10 years. I think it's 13 years now. I actually wanted to take care of her. The therapist said, each one of us has our work to do on our own selves. We are in charge of our own space. We have decisions to make. We can choose goodness. I couldn't go on. Now, I'd like to hear some suggestions. What should I have done? What's your alternative? If you still don't believe this, but these are the questions I've had for me, and I couldn't do anything else but come out. I've had a lot more energy, emotional energy. I quit drinking. I got remarried. I adopted some kids. I'm going to work until I'm 75 or 80 because I've got the energy for it now. I've got the emotional connectedness because of authenticity and reciprocity. Be your own best self. It can't be forced on you to be somebody else. Gender identity, sexuality, preference, who we are, self-concept, it's all beyond parents. It's one of the things I had to tell my dad early. It's not your fault. He thought it was genetic because he has a cousin that's gay. I think loving your children enough to allow them to be their own best self should be considered. Foster that authenticity. Don't foster your agenda. Or there's a huge lifetime of consequences that accrue. And that's the point of this story. You force somebody into the wrong decision, and it became an everlasting lie. And it became a huge burden, an increasing burden that could not be coped with by getting married, by going to medical school, by achieving every other thing other than caring for yourself.